Voice dialogue is a method that Sidra and I developed to objectify the selves. The psychology of selves is the name of the theory that we give to our work. The goal of the work is the development of the aware ego process. Now, you can't really separate the psychology of selves as a theory and voice dialogue as a method from a number of other ways of working with people. For example, we have to learn how to react to each other, how to really speak to each other. We have to learn how to have boundaries. We have to learn about energy, because we're more than just a physical body, we're also an energy field. And I'm impacted if you enter into my energy field. That affects me. And that's a new kind of education. It's not something that we've had a chance to learn in the past. But the next few hundred years we'll be educating ourselves about energy fields. We have to become master of our own energy fields. As Sidra loves to say, we have to learn how to play our own instrument, which is a really apt way of putting it. The dream process is a very, very major and significant part of this training, because what are dreams but the dance of the selves? Okay? They're the dance of the primary selves, and they're the dance of the disowned selves. And they're extremely valuable because they give you a picture of what is in balance and what is out of balance. Now, if you don't remember dreams, don't worry about it. There are plenty of ways to work with consciousness without dreams. But since an increasing number of people around pay attention to dreams, and also since listening to dream material affects people and it hits you quite deeply, and then people start dreaming, we wanted to take a little bit of time to consider this dream process. Dreams are pictures that come to us while we're sleeping. Since we're sleeping, we aren't awake. That's a profound
That's
statement.
really deep. I like that.
And since we're not awake, we're living in some other level of reality than our ordinary reality. So it means then that these pictures that come to us are coming from a different level of reality than the one that we're used to when we're awake. The technical name, or the generic name that we give to this other level of reality, is the unconscious. Some people refer to it as the subconscious. From our perspective, those are just differences in the depth of the different reality. Ordinary reality, subconscious reality, unconscious reality. Unconscious reality then can also exist at many, many different levels. So some of these pictures that come to us and bring scenes that are very, very personal, very much related to our everyday life. Others begin to tap into much, much deeper levels of other realities, and they may deal then with all kinds of mythological themes, or what has been termed archetypal motifs in dreams. So these pictures then extend from very surface levels of ordinary reality to very, very deep and profound levels of realities that go beyond really anything we know about in our ordinary reality.
Some people say they never dream. Is that true?
The question isn't whether they dream, the question has to do with dream recall. Dream research has shown beyond any question that all people are dreaming, and that's been measured and studied a great deal of the time. But it is a fact that some people remember their dreams and some people don't remember their dreams. It is not a bad thing to not remember your dreams, because there's a lot of ways to work on yourself. I mean, one can meditate, and one can work in all the different psychological ways. One can do spiritual work. So the people that don't remember dreams have a lot of options in terms of how they work with them. It is the case, however, that when you expose yourself to dreams, when you listen to people talking about dreams, when you read about dreams, when you get off the freeway of life and are not racing 24 hours a day, and you have time at night, or especially time in the morning when you first wake up, or if one has a pad of paper so that you can jot down a dream. So when you attend to the dream, many people who don't remember dreams will often begin to have dream recall. Okay, now let me just say that the dream process, as I said, it's the dance of the self. So let's just take a look at some of the basic kinds of dreams that we have, and I want you to see how an understanding of the psychology of selves allows you to make sense out of dreams. Let's take the very common dream that you're up in a very, very high place, okay? Now, from what you know about the psychology of selves now, okay, what would it mean to dream that you're up very, very high in a very tall building and it's not safe, or you're at the top of a mountain and you can fall down? What might that mean?
Insecurity.
Huh?
Insecurity.
Yeah, but what selves are involved in being up high?
What are making you insecure?
Huh?
Your rational mind?
Your rational
mind.
mind. So that would be one thing that keeps you up high off the ground. And what other self might keep you away from the ground, away from your own physical body, away from your emotional reactions?
Spiritual self.
Spirituality, you got it. Those are the two main selves, and there's one other
There's
one.
one other one.
That's more sophisticated.
And that's the special one that has to be great or best. The high, better than everybody else, a kind of a competitive special self. And if you have to be the best, you can always fall off too.
Okay, so there's a dream that you know, I mean, 20–30% of dreams involve that motif of being up high and falling, okay?
Is it possible to be conscious of your dreams while you're dreaming?
Some people have developed that talent. And very often in the transformational process, when people work with dreams, you will see develop in the dream process the emergence of the aware ego, in which while the person is dreaming, you are there watching the dream, and literally there's an aware ego watching the dream going on. So yes, that can happen. Sometimes it's a combination of training, specific training, but usually it's a natural result of the transformational process.
Is it useful to remember and write down your dreams?
It's useful if you're motivated to do so. The greatest danger about asking people to write down dreams or telling them it's a good idea is that the critic takes over the function of determining that you should write down your dreams. Then when you start to not write down your dreams, the critic is on your case because you're not writing down the dreams, and whatever good there is from writing down your dreams is lost by the power of the critic. So the answer is, at different times in our lives, it's very valuable to record dreams and pay attention to them. But we shouldn't feel compulsive about it, and we shouldn't feel that if other times we don't write them down, there's nothing wrong with that.
Are the things that we experience in dreams useful to us in any way?
Well, that's, of course, why we pay attention to dreams, because this other order of reality that we call the unconscious has a number of different properties. And one of these properties is that it seems to have an intelligence. What I mean by that is that it seems to promote the development of consciousness in us. It's as though the unconscious wants us to learn about all these different selves, and it's constantly balancing what we know and don't know. If we are too much identified with a certain way of being, the tendency of the unconscious is to come along and show us that we're too identified with this particular thing. And we'll give examples of this later. And if we have disowned energies, selves, then the unconscious comes along and shows us very, very clearly that we have disowned them. And it does this sometimes in very funny ways, other times in very, very serious ways. It also really lets us know when it's time to claim a disowned self. So, for example, in our work, very often we wait for the dream to let us know when to move in and work with certain selves, because the person isn't ready until we feel that the unconscious has prepared the way for it. What about a dream that you're in an automobile and you're driving much too fast on the freeway, And maybe you crash, maybe you don't crash. So what kind of self is involved? What's the unconscious trying to show you when it brings you a dream that you're moving that fast? Pusher, you got it.
This dream can be looked at in two ways. We can look at it as a precognitive dream, or something that's telling you there's some problem with your brake system, and have you check your brakes, which is always a good idea when you have a dream like that. But the way we would look at that is, who is driving your car? And what is going on? And what is happening is you're driving too fast, you're out of control, and it's a pushing part of you that's rushing, that has no time to stop, that really isn't paying attention to the entire picture that's in control.
Does the car symbolize or signify anything?
The car often symbolizes the way you move through life, your own personality. So whoever's driving your car, we kind of think of it as the psychological car. Whoever's driving your car at any one moment gives an indication of which part of you or who in your life is driving your car. So for instance, if I dream that Hal is driving my car, it's my car. And if he's driving it, I have to stand back and think about that. Now, is he driving my car? Is he determining everything that I'm doing right now? If I'm driving it too fast, am I going too fast in life? If I'm not paying attention to the terrain, am I losing track of some details in my life that I should be paying attention to?
So the highway is your life at the present time?
Yes. So the highway would be my life at the present time. The car would be the way I'm moving through it, or the personality, or the primary self, the parts of us that are driving it.
Would a dream such as the car crashing be a prediction dream that you're going to have a car crash?
That's the mystery of it. You really can't tell unless you do or don't have a car crash. So we would say, watch your brakes, check your car, be careful driving, but look at who's psychologically driving your car. Look at how you're driving your car through life. So you've got both. There's no way of telling if a dream is precognitive until the thing happens or doesn't happen.
Can dreams be precognitive? Can they be true?
Definitely, definitely. People dream exactly situations that are coming up. They'll dream about plane crashes or car crashes or someone dying. That's another good example, actually. If you dream of someone dying, somebody in your life, it may be precognitive, but it may be that your particular relationship to that person is undergoing a change, or the part of you that's like that person is undergoing a change.
Being chased in dreams, I mean chased by bad people, not chased non-sexual. I just wanted to clarify that point. You're being chased in dreams by all kinds of creatures, and they're usually scary, scary people, scary animals. Knowing what you know about the psychology of selves, who is it that is always chasing you in your dreams? The disowned selves, exactly. So you have this dream in which a wild animal is after you, and you wake up in a nightmare. Okay? So who's after you? It means that you're behaving too nicely in the world, and your instinctual, your animal side, your jungle side, is after you. Okay? That doesn't mean you have to become a jungle person. It just means you're out of balance. Does that make sense?
You know, in the growing up process, we're trained to be a particular way in life. And when we are that way, when we become socialized, our animals or our dark parts or the less socialized parts have to be repressed or put away or disowned. And the dark animals or the scary animals chasing us are the disowned selves that are trying to catch up to us. And in the dreams, we're running away from them. Very frequently, you could see the process in the dreams. So, for instance, a man has all his life dreamt that there's a lion chasing him. And he always runs from it, and he wakes up in a panic. Now, this is a man who's very good, very responsible, very sensible. He's always disowned the parts of him that are like a lion, that would be more ferocious and more instinctual. As he separates from his good, responsible part, not becoming irresponsible necessarily, not becoming bad, a bad person, he becomes less afraid of the lion. And then at some point in the process, he's going to stop and face the lion, or the lion is going to come up and be a friend, and he's going to either look in the lion's eyes. Usually that's what it's like. They look in the lion's eyes and they get the strength, they feel the strength coming into them.
And does this signify a change in the person?
This would be very significant of a change in the person, that he's no longer afraid of his lion energy, and that he now has access to that. He has access to the power of the King of Beasts.
Can anybody think of a dream of somebody chasing them? Short dream, quick.
What was chasing you?
Bad bands, like a murderer, kidnapper type person.
Okay,
Okay, and what is your primary self in terms of bad and hurting people?
Nice, pleasing.
Okay, so
would you repeat that, Sidra?
he's a nice pleaser. So, and you wouldn't hurt people. You wouldn't hurt people on a bet. So the unconscious brings up this whole picture of somebody who can hurt people, who can murder if necessary, you know, and can set boundaries, can protect you. But all these instinctual energies, this ability to hurt somebody else, is not available to your primary self. See, what happens is when our pleaser or some nice part of us is a primary self and we totally disown anything that's selfish or could hurt someone else, what happens is that we put everybody else's feelings first, and we never can say yes or no appropriately in terms of what we want. So then the killers start to chase us.
I saw a man once who was a physician. He had disowned in his life and in his marriage. He had 2 children. Everything that had to do with sexuality, and he was just identified with being a nice person and very responsible. And I saw him, he practically crawled into my office. He'd gone to a minister first, and the minister sent him to me. And he had fallen in love with a woman exactly 9 months before. A very sensual, sexual woman, completely the opposite from himself and his wife. No scruples whatsoever. And he had given up his practice, he'd given up his life over that 9-month period, and when he had nothing, and I mean nothing, he lost his marriage, he lost his medical practice, he lost all his money, and when she was finished, she left him. And he came to see me. I asked him if he remembered any dreams, and he remembered a dream that he had the night that he met her at a party. And the dream was that he's standing in his house behind glass windows, and in the field is a bull, a black, gigantic bull. And he looks at the bull, and the bull says, and he says, the bull wouldn't charge me. And he's trying to read the bull's mind, but the bull lowers its head and charges and destroys his house. And that was the night that he met the woman. And what is the bull? It's all of the disowned selves, all of the disowned instinctual energy that had built up in the unconscious of this man for years and years and years and years and took over. So disowned cells affect our life all the time, just all the time, and create havoc. The scarier the person that's chasing you, that lets you know exactly how strong the other side is, how strong the primary self is on the other side, okay? So what's a nightmare? A nightmare just means a disowned self to the 15th power. In other words, it's a gradation. Over here, somebody's chasing you, it's not a nightmare. Here it gets scarier, here it gets scarier, here you have a nightmare. All that means is that the primary self over here is that much more extreme on that side.
And it doesn't always have to be a killer or a wild animal.
Why do children...
You could be chased by somebody who's unemployed if your pusher is somebody who has to keep you working all the time.
Can you see this disowned energy come up in any other forms in dreams?
You can see the disowned energies coming up in other forms. This particular kind of energy that I'm talking about is the disowned instinctual or uncivilized energy. And there was a beautiful dream that a man brought to us of, he was standing on a terrace overlooking a lawn that sloped down to a pool, a swimming pool. And out of the swimming pool came this wild man. He just rose out of the pool and he had hair all over his body and he was wild and he was very, very frightening looking. And as he walked up the lawn closer and closer to the dreamer, his hair started falling out and he became much more civilized looking. And when he finally approached the dreamer close enough, he was very handsome, very strong, and then the dreamer, the ego of the dreamer, embraced him. And that was a beautiful picture of a transformation of this energy that when it's disowned and it's far away, it's very frightening. And as it moves in and it moves closer, it becomes a part of you and it becomes very beautiful and powerful.
So for that man who was dreaming, the wild man signified the parts of himself that he'd lost touch with?
The wild man signified the uncivilized parts of him that he had lost touch with as a young boy when he was trained to be a good boy.
And having a dream like that for somebody, would that actually alter how they felt about themselves or alter their abilities in life?
For this man, it did alter the way he felt about himself and his abilities in life. It gave him some of that strength, some of that animal strength back, and the ability to know what he liked and disliked, what he wanted to do and what he didn't want to do. Because in the socializing process, which we have to go through to be able to live together, one thing that's interesting to think about is all the unsocialized people, all the people who carry what are our disowned selves, are in jail or in trouble someplace. Okay, so at any rate, as he grows up and as he becomes civilized and he learns to behave himself, he has to get rid of lots of energies, and he has to often unlearn what he wants and what he doesn't want. We very frequently forget what it is we want to do that we're not doing, and what it is we do not want to do that we do anyway.
Why do children dream of monsters attacking them all the time? Why is that such a common dream in children? What's the primary self of most of us as children and of most children that requires the unconscious to have them attacked all the time by monsters? Why is that so common? What's the primary self? Pleaser. We have to make children nice at some level. It's a question of how extreme that process is. But the monster dream is the natural, we call it the natural compensation or balancing of the unconscious to a primary self that has become too positive and too over-socialized. So you see what the psychology of selves gives you once you begin to sense into it? It gives you a way of understanding dreams very quickly.
Let's sum up the points so far. Voice dialogue is a technique to objectify the selves. The psychology of selves is the name given to the theory behind it. The goal of the work is to develop a strong, aware ego. When the work begins, there is often an increase in dreams. Dreams are pictures which show the dance of the selves from a different perspective, a different state of consciousness. Many dream figures can easily be defined as selves in different guises, attempting to bring the psyche into balance. The unconscious seems to have an intelligence that promotes the development of more consciousness within us.
So, Hal, do you have any dreams and some ideas of what they mean?
I have a few thousand, but I'll take a few. I'm also very, very interested in this issue of the disowned instinctual energies because they cause so much mischief. And when these instinctual energies are disowned, you know, they get projected onto the world, onto people in the world, and they become the bad guys. But one very, very funny one was a woman in England that worked with us in one of our workshops, and she had a dream that, well, she was a New Age person. She went to all the workshops, and she was very spiritual and very loving and very caring. And unfortunately, the New Age movement is a little bit unbalanced in terms of the disowning of the instinctual energies. In her dream, she walked down into the basement of her home. And as she walked down into this basement, there were cages filled with tigers and lions, all the wild animals of the jungle, and they were all asleep, listening to New Age music. That the New Age music had put them to sleep. That doesn't make New Age bad. It just means that it's not balanced. What the unconscious does that's so beautiful is it doesn't say that this is bad, it simply says it's unbalanced. So what a dream like this forces her to do is to pay attention to, what am I doing? How am I unbalanced? How are my lions and tigers being lulled to sleep in this way?
So what did the lions and tigers hold for her in a practical sense?
Well, it would be her ability to meet life and to growl, to make noise, to be aggressive, to be assertive, to be selfish, to not be conscious all the time. You see, what someone like this does is they define consciousness as being loving. And consciousness isn't being loving, consciousness is being everything, you see. So when loving becomes your goal and unconditional loving becomes your goal, then the whole instinctual sphere gets left out. It gets put to sleep. So the dream is really a perfect image of that.
So why would people be drawn into a New Age scene, believing it to be consciousness and yet be so wrong?
Well, the yearning for God is so deep in people. The spiritual movement is, of course, based on the yearning for God. People really want to join with divinity, and that's a very beautiful and very true feeling and motivation. The seductive part of it, however, is that it goes along with a lot of rules about how you should get there. And if you are trained by gurus, teachers, therapists, ashrams that teach you that the goal is to be loving all the time and to be compassionate all the time, then those ways of being become literally primary selves, and they drive the car. So you're always trying to be loving. You're always trying to be compassionate. You're always trying to be unconditional in your giving feelings. What happens is, as soon as you try to be a certain way, and that's the key, try. As soon as you try to be a certain way, underneath your kingdom, a garbage dump begins. It's unfortunate, but that's what begins to happen, you see, because when you try to be loving, then whenever you're not loving, that becomes a no-no that gets buried, you see. So that's how the process takes place. These become primary selves.
So all those people who are trying to be loving may very well have a basement full of lions and tigers.
They do. There's no question about it. And you can usually tell, you get a certain feel about the person. I'll give you another example. Many, many years ago, I was doing a group for a group of ministers, and one of the ministers had the following dream. And he had a dream that he was trying to wrestle a drunk penis into a cold shower. Remarkable dream. Now, when he started out, at the age of 2 or 3, his penis wasn't drunk, it was just a penis. And there was no need to wrestle it any place. It was a natural symbol of his sexuality and masculinity and assertiveness. But since he was trained in a family that saw sexuality as something that took him away from God, again, the impulse for God is there all the time in these situations. They, of course, trained him that sexuality was bad and instinctuality was bad and so forth and so on. So what happened then is that he focused on other things. He paid attention to religion. He paid attention to all aspects of spiritual life. And, of course, with the spiritual movement, he became a part of that also. But gradually, the sexuality went underground, and it began to go out of control. And as it started to go out of control, he had to fight it even more. And pretty soon, it's a totally drunk penis that's so out of control, and now he's trying to wrestle it into a cold shower. And if he hadn't sought help when he did, his sexuality would, in fact, have gone out of control, and he could have gotten into very serious trouble. There are consequences to this kind of repression.
Would somebody who has a history of being repressed about sexuality feel naturally drawn to joining a priesthood?
Well, that could be one of the motivations. The fear of sexuality can cause you to do a lot of different things, and that's one of the things it can do. But I would imagine that if that's there, there also is there that impulse to join with God. And we respect very much that impulse. I mean, I have it very strongly in me, and Sidra in her, and we have an enormous respect for it. But we also try to help people to see the consequence of identifying with rules about how you should do that. That's where we get into trouble.
Can dreams have any significant information about illness at all?
It's very, very interesting to study dreams of people who have illness, because very often they give you psychodynamic pictures of what's happening. Okay, so for example, a physician develops cancer. He is very much identified with the primary self system that's very positive and so forth. And but he realizes when he gets cancer that there's something off psychically, and he begins a journey and begins to go to many workshops and seminars because he feels that the cancer has some psychogenic base to it. And along the way, he came to see me. The dream that he had when he came to see me was an extremely interesting one, because remember, he was identified with positive spirituality. In the dream, he's with a mafia person in a room, and the mafia man is a cold-blooded killer. I mean, absolutely his opposite. And the mafia man has a shotgun, and the mafia man, with murderous glee, hands him the shotgun and dares him to kill him, and tells him that if he doesn't kill him, the mafia man, he's going to kill the other person. And the mafia man starts to walk towards him, and the dreamer is terrified, absolutely terrified. And he finally pulls the trigger, it misfires. And the mafia man is just gleeful. You know, you're such a coward. But I'll give you one final chance. And he cocks it again. And then walks to him to kill him. There's no question about it. He's going to kill him. And the dreamer finally pulls the trigger, blows his head off, and he kills him. So you see, what the unconscious did to him there was it forced him to become a killer. Literally. He had to claim that killer in him as a part of his overall healing process. We can't say for dreams that something causes cancer. We stay away from that kind of talk because it doesn't do any good. This man used illness as a teacher and began his search. What we can say is that this kind of dynamic of very, very disowned instinctual energies is something that you find classically.
So what was the mafia man in relation to the cancer? How did that tie in?
When we are raised in traditions that are Judeo-Christian, New Age, strongly socialized, we really get rid of very, very angry, aggressive, primitive thoughts and fantasies. We act nice when we feel selfish. When we're enraged, we smile. It's a socialization training that's very, very profound, and the end result of that training is the mafia man in our dreams, you see. The next night he dreams he's at a racetrack, and this gigantic horse is running in the race, and the horse sees him, and they make eye contact, and the horse starts to chase him. And he runs away, and this gigantic horse is after him. That's the transformation of instinctual energies. He's killed his killer, okay? So now he's a killer, and now the killer energy transforms into the horse. Not a killer anymore, just a giant horse. And so it went with the process.
And the horse in the second dream that he made eye contact with showed some sort of progression or release?
Well, yes, because remember, in the first dream, it's a mafia man that he kills and he's a killer. Having claimed that, now there's a transformation of the symbol. And now the instinctual energies which come up initially as killer move to a different form. It's like they're being restored to their natural state. And now the horse is a beautiful symbol because it works so closely with man and the image of the man and the horse as riders, you know, and animal. So it's a beautiful image. So it's a literal transformation of symbolism in a dream process.
Right.
Another cancer patient, a man 65, dreams that there's a knock on the door. He opens the door and there's 2 mafia men. He's had this dream repeatedly. He has cancer. He says, look, I'll pay you, I'm sorry, I just forgot, I'll pay you. And they look at him and they say, it's too late, you've had too many warnings. And they begin to beat him up. And he was dead within a few months after that. You see, instinctual energies are not bad. They give you the ability to say no. Yes, I want this. I go after this. I choose my life. This relationship doesn't work for me. I don't like what you're doing. I want that. It's all of those energies, okay? That's healthy. We need that in life. Socialization comes along and says it's not right to say, I want this. It's not right to be selfish. It's not right to be angry. It's not right to be aggressive. So what happens is those disowned energies go through a spiraling process. They spiral and they get bigger and they get fatter and they get more and more out of control and they get more and more negative. And pretty soon, instead of being normal, natural impulses that move you into life, they're these killer energies that turn against you. They turn against you, and that's one of the reasons why the inner critic, that self-criticism certain people have that we call the inner critic, is so murderous in the way it deals with people, because it's as though this killer energy can't go out into the world to protect you. And so it shifts track, comes back through the critic, and beats you up.
So if you wanted to express these killer energies that can turn on you, obviously people don't want to become killers or, extremely aggressive or something in life. Can you express them perhaps in other ways, creatively, artistically, or in any other way?
You can work with these kinds of energies in a lot of different ways. You can paint these instinctual energies. You can work with them in sculpting formats. You can work with them in voice dialogue. We do that all the time. There are a whole variety of ways to look at that. But basically, it means examining your life to see what is it that you're not doing that you need to do for yourself, because there's a boundary issue. In this case, this man had a partner who cheated him blind for 30 years. He knew he was being cheated. He never did anything about it. And it went on and on until finally the end came. You see, and he was being forced by the unconscious through repeated dreams to pay attention to the cheating that was going on, to meet with some aggressiveness and assertiveness the challenge of this partner, but he couldn't do it.
Tidal waves? Tidal waves are very good
wonderful.
dreams.
So who would just take a shot at that? Why is that tidal wave dream? What is it in us that's being disowned that requires tidal waves to come and smother the city?
Wash up over us.
Huh?
Emotion. Got it.
You got it. So the tidal wave dream is a classic dream that has to do with the disowning of emotion, and the water, is the washing over. The other kind of dream that you have classically with the blocked emotions are the toilet dreams, where you're trying to go to the toilet and you can't urinate, or you're trying to go to you go into the toilet and it's blocked, or you can't find a toilet, or you're in a house and there are no toilets, because that has to do with emotional release also, you see. So those are the two classic dreams that have to do with that, okay?
The falling dream. Of course, I'm terrified of heights now.
What's that got to do?
The falling dream simply means that you're living either too much in your head and you're up too high, or too much in spirituality, or too much identified with being special in the world. Those are the three categories of the dream. So it's very typical for people to be up high and falling. Oh, and that dream repeats itself over and over and over again.
There can be other kinds of disowned energies, and some of them are kind of funny even when they appear in the dreams. And in contrast with these powerful ones, I was thinking of 3 different dreams. One of them was dreamt by a woman who's pretty much in control and sober about her life, careful about her expenditures and her self-indulgence. So her primary way of being in the world is cautious, and as I said, more likely to be self-sacrificing than self-indulgent. And she's driving in her dream, she's driving a rather ordinary car down a street. And every time she stops at a stoplight, these women jump in. 3 doors, 2 doors in the back and the one on the side. And these women are all the same type. They're all very well dressed, very well cared for, very self-indulgent. They've obviously spent oodles and oodles on themselves. And so she chases them out, locks the doors, keeps driving the car. The next stoplight, the women come in again, the same kinds of women. So we have a different kind of disowned self, really, one that says, I can be selfish, I can take care of myself, and I can accept things. So that's one set of disowned energies. Another one that I was thinking of was a woman who has a pusher as a primary self, who's always doing and productive and achieving, always having to prove that there's something that she's done to earn her rest and to earn whatever she has in life. What terrifies her in dreams are people lying in hammocks. She finds herself wandering through a field where there are hammocks and people are just lying in hammocks, enjoying themselves, and her heart starts beating fast in terror. So those are her disowned energies. Those are her animals that are chasing her. And the third one I was thinking of was it was a dream that a woman had. She's a very responsible woman. She was somebody who took care of everybody and was always attracting irresponsible people into her life. And she was responsible for her daughter, whom she had with a very irresponsible husband. And he was the second or third of a series of irresponsible husbands. They were all, because she was such a rock, all the men who came into her life were kind of flaky and depended on her to take care of things. And she dreams that she's going to school. And school is a wonderful metaphor because all of these are lessons for us to learn. It's all lessons about how to become more conscious, how to separate from our way of being in the world, not getting rid of it, and bring in other ways of being and broaden our choices. At any rate, she dreams she's rushing to this classroom, and it's a class that she has flunked before. And it is a class she's had to take over and over and over again. And as she rushes in and she gets to the back of the room, she has to because she's a little bit late, she slides into her seat. She's all out of breath, and she opens her book to start taking notes. And the teacher has his back to the class, and he's writing on a blackboard. And he finishes writing, and he turns around and he faces her. And it's her ex-husband, the very irresponsible one. So there, too, is a disowned self that's popping up over and over again.
Because a lot of people like to push away the things they think are bad.
That's right.
But you can't really do that.
You can't really push away the things that you think are bad because they come back. And even with the animals you dream of, the scary animals, if you have them as part of you, then you don't have to be angry or worried about people who carry them on the outside. You stop judging people on the outside. It's a funny thing, you know, it's one of these paradoxes. As soon as you stop trying to become compassionate and stop trying to be understanding of everybody and start to be a little more understanding of yourself and the broad range of feelings and selves within you, suddenly other people become much more familiar, much less threatening, and far less something to judge and change.
The dream of the house getting smaller and smaller and smaller, that's a very common dream in children, okay? And again, it has to do with over-socialization. You see?
Too many rules, really having all of your options cut off. The house dreams are dreams that we do have that give us a picture of how we live, where we live in the world. And as they get smaller and smaller, it means we have less and less room to move in. And there are more and more rules chopping us down. And then sometimes as we do transformational work and we start to expand, the houses get bigger in the dreams. And other rooms show up that we didn't know were there. So if I dream that I'm living in my childhood home, it means something. It means that there's a part of me that's acting or reacting the way I did in childhood. If I'm living in a very cramped, dark, cold place, I have to step back and think, what is it about my life that's not comfortable, that's too restrictive, that's cold, that's not giving me what I need? Someone dreams that, you know, I'm in a house and I come out of that house. It's a beautiful round house. It's perfect. It's quite smooth. I come out of that house into a new place. And as I walk out of that house, a door closes behind me and it becomes one with the wall. And there's no turning back. You look back and there's no place to go. You're on a new path and you look around and you see an untilled garden, a tilled garden with fresh dirt, all worked up and ready to be planted, and a first row of rose bushes round the edge. So you have this sense of leaving the old way of being, the old way that was quite perfect in its way, and quite controlled and quite contained, and not being able to go back. But in a new place where all new kinds of things can happen, new plants can be put in, new growth can happen, can occur. It's really a very beautiful image. There are lots of images when people start taking their journeys of doors closing behind them so that they can't go back. Yes, the dream he's talking about is the dream of losing your teeth, when you bite into something and all your teeth fall out. And that's very much just, you can't bite into life. It's again the disowning of instinctual energies, of these protective, more aggressive energies, because you can't bite into things. And again, it's a dream of somebody who is more identified with being good or spiritual or pleasing. Thanks. Yeah.
When you're out in a crowd and you find that you're the only one undressed. You have maybe a small singlet or something and you're trying to pull it down and everybody else is fully clothed.
That's that beautiful one of being exposed.
Why would the unconscious do that to this lovely lady, okay? Why would the unconscious give her a dream that she's in this little singlet and she's trying to cover herself? So what would the unconscious be balancing? What is it trying to do? What is it trying to show her? Too many rules. Too many, huh?
Too introvert.
Well, introvert might be it, but too much identified with doing the proper thing. It's really the rule thing that you mentioned, you see? So if we're too identified with doing the proper thing, then the unconscious has us naked and embarrassed. You see?
Because we always have to be covered and proper, and our what'll people think voice and the rule voice is very, very strong.
So it's a balancing dream to help you to you know,
Don't worry as much.
does that make sense?
Yeah. One of the most amazing things about dreams and about the unconscious is it's something you can rely on very personally to give you an objective picture that you are really the expert in interpreting. And it may take a while, but you gradually recognize the themes, and you may want to read a couple of books, but basically it's your themes and it's your dreams.
Because a lot of people find it very difficult to know where to start to understand their dreams. How can you get any idea of what it all means?
Well, you could start by just writing them down. Make believe each dream is a story and give it a title. And you don't have to make a big deal of it, and just write it down. Write it down and then think, what would be a good name for this? And how did I feel about it? And if this were happening in my day-to-day life, what would I say about it? Or if this were happening to somebody else, what might I say? And just look at it objectively. I find that writing a story and elaborating a little bit is really very, very lovely. There are some dreams that you might want to work with and look at the different characters in the dreams as part of yourself. Like the woman who went to take a class and she sees that her husband is teaching it. Well, obviously, this husband is a teacher to her, and she says, what does he have to teach me? Well, he has to teach me how to be a little less responsible in the world. He knows how to do that very well. So you can look at the different characters in the dream as different aspects of yourself, or different selves, or different animals in the dream as different selves. There are some dreams that you just want to sit with. and you don't want to do anything but just feel them or picture them, meditate on their images. There are certain dreams that we think of as numinous, that carry a kind of a magic to them. And those are ones you want to work with symbolically. Hold them in your heart, see what happens, maybe draw them, paint them, write poems about them.
And slowly you'll become aware
Exactly.
of what they mean.
Yeah. And it may be years before you know, before the full meaning of a dream comes out.
That long?
Yeah. You look back, some very important dreams in our lives we look back on over and over again. And they may have even instituted a whole series of actions. But when we look back on them, that's when we see the pattern, and we see that the dream had started it.
But there's no reason to spend the rest of your life haunted by those dreams. I mean, that is not necessary. And there are very good people around that can move you through that material. So, I mean, I have taken advantage of therapy in my life. I have had more hours of personal therapy than all of you combined for the next 12 incarnations. Okay? And I tell you, and then that was before I met her, and then she and I, with each other, facilitated each other for 48,312 times a week. So,
The
I
thing I really
mean,
like is he never exaggerates.
I never exaggerate. No, I'm making a case here. I just don't believe it's necessary to continue suffering for no reason. There are really good people around. If person one doesn't do it, person two will do it. And I say go for it. It's not necessary any longer. We have too much knowledge. We have too much understanding of the psyche now. I couldn't have said that 20, 30, 40 years ago. But there's a lot of people out there that know what they're doing. And if those dreams are haunting you, they're haunting you for a reason, and it's understandable, and you can move through it. So I say go for it.
Can I just ask about flying dreams, if I may?
Yeah, flying dreams. Flying dreams are also very common, and you have to look at them in context of the person's life. If I have a flying dream and I'm a very, very spiritual person and I'm not very grounded, or I'm a very, spontaneous, irresponsible person and I'm not grounded, I'm going to have a flying dream to show me that I'm high up and I better come down. Okay? If I'm a more grounded kind of person and very pragmatic, the flying dreams start to come in very frequently to show me that it's time to not stay so close to the earth, that there are other areas to move in. And it breaks me out and brings in other possibilities, and it brings in spirit, and it brings in mind, it brings in the opposite. So really, depending on who you are, it'll go one way or the other. And series of flying dreams as we change are very, very common, where you start learning to fly, and then you learn better and better, and you get better and better control of yourself flying. And that's then that movement between higher and lower, the higher worlds and the lower worlds.
Some people say they only dream in black and white, and some in color. Is there any significance in that?
I have never studied that systematically, and I don't know of the research on it myself. My personal experience, having seen that many times, is I can't find any meaning at all. I don't. Now, if someone has always dreamed in black and white and then suddenly they have a color dream, usually there'll be content in that dream that will go along with the color emerging. But when people in patterns dream black or color, I personally have never seen the significance of it. It doesn't say it doesn't exist, but I don't know it. Yes.
Speaking of the flying thing, I dream every night, but I can't say I've ever had a dream that's, well, I've said definitely colour. And after going to Michael's seminar at Darling Harbour, he suggested to tap your head 3 times on the pillow. I'm going to remember my dreams system. I took it 5 nights. On the 5th night, I had the most full-on Technicolor. I was flying in a jet. I could feel the heat from the jet in front of me. I could see the colours. It was the most real, unbelievable, out of control, flying in the air and nearly landing and just getting up again and nearly crashing and eventually landed. But the most breathtaking colour and sound and feeling, and never had anything like it before in 45 years.
Well, it just means that you're learning how to fly and you need a few more lessons. In other words, the the suggestion essentially, you know, threw you into the air. You know what I mean? You started flying, and you really got the vividness and everything of the unconscious. You really began to fly. You left the ordinary earth. But that doesn't yet give you the ability to fly, so it takes years and years and years to learn how to fly. You know what I mean? So you're in the process of learning how to fly, and it's very exciting. The biggest problem that people have is that they try to comprehend dreams with their mind. It's very hard to do that because dreams are very confusing. So if people are trying to figure them out mentally, they get into big trouble. Sidra has given a whole number of different ways of relating to the dreams that don't require always thinking about them. So one of the things I like very much is, she already mentioned it, but I'll just repeat it, and that is learning to hang out with different figures in dreams. Just literally hang out with them. So you close your eyes and you just feel them. So they become a part of your life. And the unconscious likes attention. It really, really likes attention. And you don't have to understand it with your head, but if you hang out with it and give it time, it flowers, and it gives you more images, and it gives you deeper images, and it gives you clearer images. And when you ignore it, it really can turn very sour and turn very much against you. It's very striking to see how dreams change when people begin to pay attention to them. Did anybody have a dream last night, a nice, short, clear, easily understandable dream that'll make the workshop look good? Yes?
You can imagine a lot of women about to enter a store on January sales or something like that. I felt I had all these pieces, and they were jigsaw pieces, and they were all running towards this door trying to get out. And there was all this energy, and I woke up really exhausted almost in a way, because I sort of felt like it was all myself sort of trying to get out this tiny door that's just been opened, and they were pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. But like, it was fairly obvious what it was to me anyway.
Well, why don't you tell us what it was to you?
It was all my different selves just starting to realise, oh, we're about to be listened to, we're about to be acknowledged, we're about to be identified. And they're all just rushing, trying to get out, saying, me first, me first, me first, me first.
We'll pay you later for that.
Let's sum up the points so far. Many people think that the goal of consciousness work is to become unconditionally loving. It's not. It's to become or to embrace everything. The process of socialization, when focused too intensely on the burial of the instinctual selves, causes those disowned energies to turn on a person, contributing to all sorts of difficulties, including disease. When killer dreams occur, it is useful to examine your life to see what it is that you are not doing for yourself that you need to do. Some dreams can take years to comprehend. It is useful to make each dream a story, give it a name, write it down. Identify what you feel about the dream. If this dream was happening in daily life, what could you say about it? Learn to hang out with dreams and different dream figures. The unconscious likes attention. If you pay attention to it, it will flower.